Hey everybody, this video is designed to go over the basics of the free online graphing calculator called Desmos. This is an awesome free tool that you can use to help you explore when you're working with different graphs of functions. So if you go to Google and search desmos.com, it should come up pretty easily. There's different calculators that you can take advantage of, but we're going to go ahead and click this one to start graphing. Let's look at the basic square root function. So y equals, you have a toolbox down here, square root of x. So that is the basic square root function. Now what we can do is start manipulating this function. We can start changing what that graph is going to look like. One thing I could do is add a constant out in front of that function. So if I insert a positive 5, if you see what that did to the original graph, it just shifted up that graph 5 spaces. What if I were to put a positive 5 inside the square root with the function x? So now instead of seeing a vertical shift, I'm seeing a horizontal shift. And remember, the horizontal shifts are actually going to be backwards of what you think it would be. If you have x plus 5, you would think that that would go to the right because it's positive 5. But what ends up happening is you have to compensate for that plus 5, so it actually ends up moving it to the left. So the function now takes off from x being negative 5. Another way that I can manipulate this graph is by inserting a factor of negative 1. Let's see what happens if I put that factor inside on the x. So that's going to cause a reflection about the y-axis. So if you have the negative factor on the input on x, you're going to have a reflection across the y-axis. Or you could insert a factor of negative 1 in front of the function. And what that's going to do is reflect your graph across the x-axis. So you just have to pay attention to where that negative is showing up. Is it outside of the input or is it part of the input? That's how you'll know which reflection it's going to be. So feel free to use Desmos to help you when you're working with graphs, to double check if you're understanding something. It's a pretty quick tool. It's free. It's very user-friendly. And you can use this for any of the functions. So just as another example, let's say that I'm working with the absolute value function. Another cool thing that you can do with this is you can actually do another function and have the basic one showing up and then graph whatever one that you're looking at. So let's say I was looking at y equals negative square root of 2x plus 5. And then outside of the absolute value, let's say I saw a minus 3. So now I can see the basic function, which is in red. That's just the basic square root function. And then I also can see where my new function would be. The negative out in front caused a reflection around the x-axis because it's outside of the input. So instead of the V opening up, it's opening down. The 2 in front of the X is actually making my graph more narrow than the original graph because when I put the same input, it's now twice what it used to be. So it's going to be a bit of a skinnier V than what I had before. That plus 5 was in charge of moving the graph over to the left, and you could actually figure out what that value is that's going to make that 0. And you could also use the graph to help point to that value. So if you ask yourself, when would 2x plus 5 be equal to 0? Where is that shift actually happening? It's going to actually move it 2.5 units to the left. And then that -3 is responsible for shifting that basic graph. Instead of being on the x-axis, it got shifted to the left, and then that -3 moves it 3 units down. I hope that you find Desmos to be useful, especially when you're working through homework. It's just a really nice, quick way to get your graphs going, especially if it's hard for you to visualize what you're working with. You can easily pull up Desmos, insert your function, and you'll instantly know what the graph of that function would look like. They also have a free app. So if you go into your app store on your phone, you can download the Desmos app for free. And again, it's just a nice way to be able to create graphs very quickly. All right, that's it for this video. Feel free to keep exploring with Desmos. There are lots of cool features that you can check out.